And then suddenly you see this like 8-meter high wall in front of you, and it's like, oh my God, I designed that.
Alexander McCargar originally came to Austria during the 2015-16 program year as a combined grantee, and continued teaching English as a USTA during the 2016-17 program year. Since his 2 years as a program participant, Alex has started a PhD in theater history and worked on a wide variety of theatrical projects in several countries. He recently sat down with us to talk about the impact that his Fulbright Austria experience had on him, and about where life has taken him in the meantime.
So I mean, with teaching English, when I first came, I thought, okay, as a combined grantee, I'll have the, English and then sort of main focus on my project. But I quickly realized that to have this kind of outlet into the community here was really, really important. And I started thinking about like teaching more seriously. And I mean, now I sort of teach, basic, things online, like tutoring and such. But I realized that this sort of connection was really important, like being part of a community, not just coming and working in an archive the whole time. And then also some of the events that I did with the school. So like a group of students with one of the teachers went out to the English theater here. So that was kind of a cool event. I'd never been there before. And some of the classes that I taught, I focused on some of my research. So I was sort of taking what I was doing here with the main project and then bringing it into some of the lessons for students. I mean, first of all, my mentors here, I'm still in touch with from my main project, Fulbright project. I still work a lot with the Theater Museum, which was one of my host institutions. And then in terms of teaching and such, I mean, I still think about it. As I said, some of the teachers that I worked with in the school, I'm in touch with like now and again. But this idea of teaching and being a sort of greater part of a community definitely expanded into something that was sort of a bigger than I expected in my mind. But definitely, I mean, going out to events here as a Fulbright student, so and a combined grantee, going to the theater sometimes in the evenings, like meeting people here and there, kind of building up connections that way. Like a lot of the things that I did, like go to the opera or Theater on the Wien or something, like I still do now. So that was really the foundation of that was during the combined grantee years. During my combined grantee time, I learned that I was doing sort of artistic work, working with students in a current program of theater design and stage design, and then also doing research. And the working with the students here, it totally opened my mind and made me realize that I wanted to go on and do a master's in fine arts in stage design, in scenography. So that was like sort of, I knew that right away, or after the year here. And then in terms of the research, I'm working on a PhD now, so I still have these kind of two different paths in my life. And I'm writing my PhD at the University of Vienna, so sort of seeing some of the events and lectures and teachers here, sort of being a part of the academic community a little bit here, then led right into wanting to do a PhD. That and of course the pandemic too was when theaters were closed. I was able to switch gears pretty easily, but now I'm getting back into sort of artistic work and theater work. So it's good to have the two paths, and it's kind of waves almost. In terms of opera, I love the music. After my bachelor's studies, I did architecture, and I liked the people I was working with, but I just didn't want to sit in an office all day. I mean, I really felt like a creative person, and sort of being in an office working in front of a computer just wasn't for me. So I started going to the opera at night. At first I was in Zurich, and then I was in New York, going to the opera in Zurich and then the Met in New York with like student tickets and such. And I quickly realized that this was like, I could be a part of this by doing the kind of three-dimensional, like the architecture on stage, basically the world that's created on stage. And so that interest in the music led me to starting to sort of go to the opera, and then that realization that what I learned could be a part of what I was seeing in the theater and on stage. And then in terms of the history, that also really flourished and sort of sprouted during my Fulbright year when I was looking at theater and opera history, more generally learning about sort of practices in the 17th and 18th century here in Vienna. And then I quickly realized that it was such a rich world, and artists traveled like all over the, from different countries to Vienna. And I saw this kind of cultural overlap that really interested me. And then that became sort of the foundation for my PhD, which is looking at images of Ottomans in Viennese theater and opera of the Baroque period. So, and sort of these cultural overlaps that were happening with artists coming from different places, and then representations of people from other countries on stage as well. And so that all kind of came out of the Fulbright year, really. Yeah, I mean, it's just in stage design really began probably, coming out of my bachelor studies in architecture a little bit, but once I started going to the opera because I like the music, and then realizing, okay, I can be a part of this world through this three-dimensional side of it. And in terms of what stage design is, it's basically when you go to the theater or opera or any performance space. I've seen operas, performed in like parking garages. It could be anywhere, but it's sort of whatever worlds that you create, whatever visual worlds, three-dimensional world, whatever space the singers or the actors are taking up is basically stage design. So it could be building a room or a house on stage on the very sort of basic level, or it could be finding some kind of space out in the real world and saying, this would be a great place to have a performance. Do we need to do anything to it? Do we just take it as it is? But it's basically that sort of finding and creation of spaces for performances and operas and theater pieces. It's a good question. I designed the set for an opera in Bratislava last year, which was, it was nice because it's sort of the greater Viennese community, you could say. It's only an hour away by train. But it was my first really like large scale project. And I think that idea when you work in your head in a model and on paper a lot, in the computer a little bit doing drawings, and then suddenly you see this like 8-meter high wall in front of you, and it's like, oh my God, I designed that. And like everyone else is sort of working to make it happen for me. That was kind of a really pretty eye-opening and amazing experience. Just the scale, realizing that suddenly like I do feel like an artist working on my own a lot, but then suddenly working with this massive team of people and having, technicians say, do you want this here? Is this big enough? That was a pretty cool experience. And of course the team was great, and Bratislava was a great place to work in.